Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Today is finally the day where Kirby will be the main topic of discussion. Yes, that's right, the new Kirby game is out and people seem to be pretty pleased by this release, myself included. My history with the Kirby series goes way back to, you guessed it, Kirby Superstar Ultra. Kirby Superstar Ultra for the DS. I haven't played every Kirby game, but I have been a fan of the series for quite some time. Some of my favorites being Superstar Ultra and Kirby's Epic Yarn. Man, Kirby's Epic Yarn was actually really good. I hear people like Planet Robobot on the 3DS, but I unfortunately have not played it. But I have played Kirby Star Allies, which is in fact a Kirby game, that's for sure. I don't know, I just really had a hard time getting into it. It was just Kirby again. Like, there was not a lot of, huge gimmicks to it. I mean, there was a gimmick, but it just didn't really work with me very well. Kirby Superstar Allies was an okay game, but Kirby really needed to shake things up a bit. And with the Forgotten Land turning the series 3D, it really does seem like a fresh new experience for Kirby. But let's go ahead and get into Kirby's Forgotten Land and see how this new 3D experience for Kirby worked out. And should this be a new template for the series going forward? Let's find out. Kirby in the Forgotten Land starts off with our pink protagonist just chilling on the planet Popstar, when suddenly a mysterious vortex shows up and sucks everything into an unknown world that looks oddly familiar. It looks a bit Earth-like, but regardless, Kirby is the only one that can get to the bottom of this and stop whoever is behind all of this mess. Kirby is joined by a little creature named Elfilin, who accompanies Kirby to stop the evil. Along the way, you'll rescue captured Waddle Dees and defeat each member of the Beast Pack. The Beast Pack is essentially a big pack of ginormous animals, each being the leader of their own respected areas. The story is as basic as it gets. In true video game fashion, the protagonist must defeat the evil. But don't get fooled by the bright and colorful visuals, because this is a Kirby game after all, and for those that don't know, most Kirby games often end in weird and dark ways. And trust me, this adventure is no exception. Artistically, this game looks incredible. The bright, cheery colors contrast to the post-apocalyptic background. It really does make this Kirby adventure unique. Unless you count that one level or world in the Kirby 64 game, but let's not get into that. Having real-world objects next to cartoony creatures is really charming. I am personally over the post-apocalyptic genre, but Kirby's artistic style pulls me into this world. There is one technical issue that persists throughout the game though, and that's the frame rate, specifically on the enemies in the background. I don't know what it is with recent Nintendo games, but they have had a hard time smoothing these guys out. Luckily, when you get closer to the enemies, they start to smooth out a bit. Still, it's kind of jarring when you see them out in the distance. That's the only problem I have with the visuals. I mean, the animations on Kirby are just top notch. It's so fun to control Kirby, and his animations really sell his weight and movement. And for a 3D platformer, that is so important to get the movement just right. The way Kirby bounces when he lands on the ground sometimes, or, whenever he gets out of his flying stage or whatever, his puffball stage, like it all makes sense in the context of the world, and the animations sell it beautifully. Overall, Kirby in the Forgotten Land looks really great and has excellent animation for Kirby. I would like to see more variation when it comes to different worlds that you explore, but other than that, the levels themselves are full of detail. I just wish that we got some really special and unique levels. We get a lot of the generic, grass area, fire area, that sort of thing. I wish they reached out a little bit more when it comes to variation. Although, don't get me wrong, there are some levels in here that do go out and do some really interesting things. The The gameplay basically boils down to a Kirby game in a Mario 3D World-like structure. You basically just take this and make it into a 3D space. There are multiple worlds with levels littered throughout, with a boss battle at the end of each world. Seems like pretty standard stuff, right? In the normal levels, the goal is to reach the end and save the Waddle Dees that you can find along the way. Of course, instead of like a flagpole at the end of the levels, there's Waddle Dees you gotta save. And that's basically the structure of the game, saving Waddle Dees. When Forgotten Land was first shown off, some people thought that Kirby was in a semi-open world with multiple ways for exploration. That is not the case. However, I don't consider that a bad thing. I have a hard time picturing Kirby in a 3D open world. Like, what exactly could you do with that? I'm not saying it's impossible, but it would be so difficult to pull off, and I'm okay with this game being the way that it is. But let's not get into what could be, but instead let's focus on what makes Kirby's latest adventure so dang fun. Well, for one thing, the level design is pretty great. There are secrets all throughout the levels, whether it's secret rooms, treasure chests, or little areas filled with star coins. It's a great incentive to look through every nook and cranny in the level. In addition to reaching the end and saving the captured Waddle Dees, there are others that are hidden throughout the level. There are even objectives that can be completed to save more of these little guys. Alongside the normal levels, you have challenge levels that are based on specific copy abilities, and the goal is simply to just reach the end and nab the star gem in the fastest time. I honestly really enjoy these sections. Yeah, you could argue that there's a lot of these challenges scattered throughout the world, but at the same time, I really enjoyed these. They allowed you to use the abilities to their fullest potential, instead of just using them on basic enemies. There's a good variety of abilities here for you to collect and play around with. There's some old favorites like the Cutter ability, the Hammer ability, and brand new abilities like the Ranger and Drill. These new abilities are a welcome addition, and I really enjoy their inclusion, especially the Drill. The Drill can do a lot more than you think it could. It could literally just earthbend.
Earthbending style!
One feature that the Forgotten Land introduces is the ability to upgrade your copy abilities. All you have to do is get some blueprints in certain levels and gather some star coins, and voila! You can now have a big sword. There's even multiple upgrades for some abilities. They add a certain level of progression that is delightful to see in a Kirby game. Not only that, but it actually gives star coins more value because upgrades require a lot of them. I do wish that some classic abilities made their way back, like the karate ability or the yo-yo ability. But at the same time, those probably wouldn't have had interesting puzzles with them, so I guess that's okay. I still wish they were in here though. Copy abilities are only half of the powers that Kirby can pull off, as the Forgotten Lands introduces Mouthful Mode. With this weird, quirky mode, Kirby can actually swallow real-world objects like a vending machine or a car and just go crazy with them.
I'm ghost riding the whip! Crazy taxi!
It's really weird when you think about it, but that's the charm of Kirby. He just does some weird stuff sometimes. Each Mouthful Mode object has a purpose, and the puzzles and the scenarios involving them are excellent. Mouthful Mode is the biggest feature advertised, but honestly, the ability to upgrade your copy abilities really should be focused on as well. And to add on to the feature list, there's a freaking town that you can build from the ground up. It's actually not as exciting as I'm making it out to be, but throughout the game, as you collect Waddle Dees, the town starts to add more and more buildings, and eventually you'll have a lovely community on your hands, with all sorts of fun mini games to do. You can go fishing, go to the movie theater, get a part-time job, or face down foes in Mortal Kombat. This town really has it all. The building of the town isn't as satisfying as other games like Ori and the Will of the Wisp, but it's still pretty neat to get new shops and buildings for you to use throughout the adventure. Kirby and the Forgotten Land is just a blast, and this style of gameplay absolutely works for the pink puffball. I do want to mention that the co-op mode in the game is okay. I think if you're playing with a sibling or your kid or even a friend who just doesn't mind tagging along with you, then the co-op mode can be a great experience. But I can't help but to feel that the experience was tacked on, or at least it feels that way. With the aforementioned mouthful mode and the abilities, the second player can't really be a part of those activities. Yeah, sure, Waddle Dee can ride on Kirby, which is pretty neat, but the abilities that you start with as Waddle Dee are the same when you beat the game. I get that he can't get new abilities, but at the same time, some of the puzzles in the game require Kirby's abilities. It's not the end of the world, but it's worth mentioning. I just wish there was more puzzles that require co-op, or maybe not necessarily that, because that would kind of break the game in single player mode, but have like, some co-op missions or something. I don't know, it just feels very unbalanced in the sense. I kind of wish that they would add 2 Kirbys, or however many players they want to add, just do another Kirby and just pretend like it's one Kirby whenever it's like cutscenes and stuff. Kind of like what Halo does, but with Kirby. As it is right now, it's fine, the co-op mode, but I mean, if you've played games like, that were specifically built around co-op or had co-op more in mind when developing the game, like Luigi's Mansion 3, then yeah, you start to see that it's just not the best in 2 players. But that doesn't mean it can't be fun. It's just, it's not for everyone. But single player wise, the game's really great. And honestly, that's what I played of most of the game, is in single player mode. But either way, it's not the end of the world, and I'm not going to nick it for having an okay co-op mode. It's there for players that want it, it's just not the best co-op in the world. The music in Forgotten Land is absolutely fantastic, especially the main theme. It's a bop. The Kirby series has always had great music, and the Forgotten Land is no slouch, as it has brand new tracks as well as some remix tracks for some of the main Kirby characters. And it's just incredible to hear. The composers of this game are as follow, and I'm not great at pronouncing Japanese names, so please bear with me. The soundtrack again is outstanding. King Dedede's battle track alone is worth a listen to. One thing to note about Kirby's Forgotten Land is the fact of how short it can be. I personally beat it over the weekend. That's just the main story. Of course, there's actually a post game, and I didn't get all the Waddle Dees in the world, so. But in terms of just going through the main story, I beat it over the weekend. But don't get me wrong, that sounds like a bad thing, but it's actually not. At least for me. This is a really good thing for me. In a world full of 100+ hour games with hundreds of locations and quests for you to take, it's just so nice to play a game with little filler and just incredible gameplay. It's just nice to just play a game, beat it over the weekend, and just sit it down and be like, okay, I've had my fill. I can go back to this game whenever I want, but I'm done with it for now. And that's how Kirby was for me. I really enjoyed just playing through the game, feeling out the controls, and just having a blast with it, going at my own pace and not feeling like I have to, sink so many hours into it just to see the story. Honestly, this game was such a breath of fresh air for the series, and I would like to see more from this third dimension in the future. That said, I would have liked to see more variation in terms of the worlds. I think the post-apocalyptic genre is I'm still a little tired of it. I was hoping to see just weird, abstract stuff going on in Kirby's Forgotten Land. But there are some locations that do a great job at, being very diverse. And I remember some of the levels in my head, and specifically like stuff with like the carnival is pretty unique. Then, like I said, the co-op's a little weak. I wish they did more with tying in the co-op. And I get that, some games just have co-op in there for, younger kids or stuff. It didn't work in my family. we just didn't really like the co-op very much, and it just didn't work with us. We just didn't like it. But overall, this is a great package. I mean, it is a shorter game, and you might want to keep that in mind. But at the same time, I had a blast with it. I really liked what they did with this. I like the formula that they went with Kirby. While the formula isn't unique, having Kirby in that formula and having that Kirby DNA mesh with that, it really does make it different. Slightly different, but different. Kirby games have a certain flavor to it. They usually have weird gimmicks that make the game that the gimmick is in stand out more. You know, like Kirby's Epic Yarn and Planet Robobot and, you know, all this weird stuff, right? And I think Kirby in the Forgotten Land did an incredible job at portraying that with mouthful mode and, you know, adding in upgrading to copy abilities. Overall, I'm just going to have to give this an 8 out of 10. It's not necessarily a 9 for me. Something is holding me back from giving it a 9, but this is a solid 8. It's a fun game. If you have someone to play co-op with, try it out. Maybe you'll like it. I personally did not like it as much. But seriously, this is a great time. It's easy, but with some of the post-game stuff, it actually does bring some challenge to the series, which is really nice. That and some of the challenge rooms are really challenging, so there is challenge to be had in this game. But of course, this is a Kirby game, so it is a little on the easy side, and that's not always my favorite when it comes to Kirby games. I generally like a little bit of challenge, but at the same time, the game is great as a whole. So it's an 8 out of 10. And that's about it. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to hit that like button if you like this video, and consider subscribing for more stuff like this. I do reviews, I do tier lists, I do random news updates, you know, just kind of getting my thoughts and impressions on the latest news for gaming. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. God bless.